Most people think they understand power. They think it comes from money, from men with guns, from fear. But in Harlem, in the late 1940s, power looked very different. Sometimes, it looked like a quiet woman walking home alone after choir practice, until the day everything changed. It was a bright afternoon. People were out on the streets, calling out to customers, cars passing by, the normal rhythm of city life moving forward like nothing could interrupt it. And right in the middle of all that normalcy, something happened that no one expected. A woman, elegant, composed, known more for her voice than anything else, stood her ground when two dangerous men tried to corner her. She didn't scream. She didn't run. Instead, she reached into her purse. What happened in the next few seconds didn't just shock the people on that street. It sent a message across the entire underworld. A message so loud that even the most feared crime families had to stop and pay attention. Because this wasn't just any woman. This was the wife of Bumpy Johnson. Now, if you know anything about Harlem's history, you already know that Bumpy Johnson wasn't an ordinary man. He wasn't just another name in the streets. He was someone people respected, feared, and in some strange way, trusted. He had built a reputation over years. Someone who played by his own code, someone who didn't bluff, and most importantly, someone who didn't lie. But even a man like him had a weakness, and her name was Mame. She wasn't part of that world when she first met him. She was a singer, a woman with a voice that could silence a crowded room, a woman who had already seen hardship growing up, but still chose a life of music, of hope, of something better. When their paths crossed, it wasn't supposed to turn into anything serious. He lived in danger. She lived in dreams. But somehow, they understood each other. And that understanding came with a cost. Because in a world like that, love doesn't stay private for long. People watch. People talk. And eventually, people look for ways to use against you. At first, it was small things. A car that stayed parked a little too long. Footsteps that seemed to follow her just a little too closely. Phone calls late at night with nothing but silence on the other end. The kind of things that make you feel uneasy but don't give you proof of anything. But then it got worse. Someone was watching her, studying her routine, learning when she was alone, learning when Bumpy wasn't around. And one night, everything came to a breaking point. She sat in their apartment, holding a gun in her trembling hands, waiting for him to come home. When he finally walked through that door, she pointed it straight at his chest. Not because she wanted to hurt him, but because she needed the truth. Can you protect me? It was a simple question, but it carried fear, doubt, and something deeper, the realization that loving him might cost her everything. And his answer? It wasn't what anyone would expect. He didn't promise safety. He didn't say everything would be okay. Instead, he told her the truth, and that truth changed her forever. From that night on, she wasn't the same woman anymore. She didn't just rely on him. She learned. She adapted. She became stronger in ways no one saw coming. So when those two men stepped in front of her that afternoon, thinking she would be easy to intimidate, they made the biggest mistake of their lives. Because they weren't dealing with a helpless woman. They were dealing with someone who had been preparing for this moment. And when the dust settled, one man was on the ground, the other was running for his life, and the entire street stood frozen, trying to process what they had just witnessed. But that was only the beginning, because news travels fast in places like Harlem, faster than you can imagine. And when word reached the people who sent those men, when it reached the men who believed they controlled everything, they didn't just get angry, they got even. What happened next didn't just put her life in danger again. It pulled Bumpy Johnson into a situation that could have started something much bigger, something neither side could easily walk away from. And the real question wasn't whether she could defend herself anymore. The real question was, what happens when you send a message so strong that the wrong people decide to answer it? The answer came faster than anyone expected. By that same night, whispers had already started moving through Harlem. Not loud, not public, just quiet conversations between people who knew how this world worked. A woman had stood her ground in broad daylight. A woman connected to Bumpy Johnson. And not just stood her ground. She had changed the balance in a way that made certain people uncomfortable. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. In that world, lines were very clear. Men handled conflict. Women stayed out of it. And if someone wanted to send a message, they usually didn't expect resistance from someone like Mame. That's exactly why she had been targeted in the first place. But now, everything felt different. People who had never even met her were suddenly talking about her. Some with respect, some with disbelief, and some with quiet anger. Back in their apartment, the mood was nothing like the chaos outside. It was calm, almost too calm. Mame sat near the window, her hands still, her face unreadable. The same woman who used to second-guess every strange noise now looked like someone who had already crossed a line and couldn't go back. Bumpy watched her closely. He didn't ask too many questions at first. He didn't rush in with instructions or warnings. He just stood there, taking in the moment, understanding what this meant. Not just for her, but for both of them. "You handled it," he finally said, his voice low. Mame nodded, but she didn't look proud. If anything, she looked like someone who understood the weight of what had just happened. "They're not going to let this go," she said quietly. Bumpy didn't answer right away, because deep down, he knew she was right. This wasn't just about two men on a street anymore. This was about reputation, about control, about how things were supposed to work, and how they had just been disrupted. And somewhere else in the city, in a place far removed from Harlem's rhythm, that disruption was already being discussed. Men sat around a table, not shouting, not panicking, but thinking, carefully, strategically, because reacting too fast could make things worse. But doing nothing, that wasn't an option either. One of them leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers slowly against the table. "So this is who we're dealing with now," he said. "Not just him, but her too." No one laughed, because no one found it funny. The situation had become complicated in a way they didn't expect. Going after Bumpy directly was one thing. That was a risk they understood. But this was different. This meant that even the people around him weren't easy targets anymore. And that changed the calculation. Back in Harlem, the streets didn't look any different the next morning. People still went to work. Shops still opened. Music still played from open windows. But underneath all of that, there was tension. The kind you couldn't see, but you could feel if you paid attention. Mame stepped out that day like she always did. Same route, same calm walk. But now, eyes followed her, not with curiosity, but with awareness. She noticed it. She noticed everything. The man who stood a little too still on the corner. The car that slowed down just slightly as it passed. The silence that felt heavier than usual. But she didn't stop. And that was the part that made it even more unsettling. Because fear usually changes people. It makes them hesitate, makes them shrink. But she wasn't shrinking. If anything, she was becoming harder to read. That evening, when Bumpy got word from one of his people that there had been movement, quiet movement, the kind that meant planning, not reacting, he understood what was coming. This wasn't over. Not even close. And the next move wouldn't be careless. It would be calculated. And when it came, it wouldn't just test Mame. It would test everything Bumpy had built. That night, Harlem didn't sleep the way it usually did. The music was still there, drifting out of clubs and bars, but something underneath it felt off. Conversations were shorter. Laughter didn't last as long. People who normally stayed out late started heading home earlier, like they could sense something building even if they didn't know exactly what it was. Inside a small back room above a busy street, Bumpy Johnson sat with two of his most trusted men. The room was quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. "They're not reacting yet," one of them said. "No noise, no sudden moves." Bumpy nodded slowly. "That's what worries me. Because silence in that world didn't mean peace. It meant planning." Across the table, another man leaned forward. "You think they'll come at her again?" Bumpy didn't answer right away. He looked down at his hands, then back up. "Not the same way," he said. "They tried that already. It didn't work. So what now?" That's the question. And it was a dangerous one, because when direct moves fail, people start thinking differently, smarter, quieter. They stop trying to overpower you and start trying to outmaneuver you. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, Mame sat in a dimly lit room backstage at the club. The sound of a piano echoed faintly through the walls as someone practiced for the late set. She held a cup of tea in her hands, but it had gone cold a long time ago. She wasn't thinking about the moment on the street anymore. She was thinking about what came after, because deep down, she understood something most people didn't. Moments like that don't end problems. They create new ones. A knock on the door pulled her out her thoughts. "You're on in 5, someone called. Mame stood up, adjusted her dress, and looked at herself in the mirror. For a second, she saw the version of herself from months ago. The singer, the woman who believed she could stay separate from everything else. That version was gone. When she stepped onto the stage, the crowd reacted the same way they always did. Applause, cheers, admiration. To them, she was still just a performer. But a few faces in the room didn't clap. They watched, carefully. One man near the bar kept his eyes fixed on her the entire time. He didn't smile, didn't drink, didn't move much at all. Just observed, like he wasn't there for the music. Mame noticed him. She didn't let it show, but she noticed. And when her set ended, she didn't go straight to the back like she usually would. She took her time, moved through the crowd slowly, let herself feel the room. The man was gone. That unsettled her more than if he had stayed. Later that night, when she stepped outside, the street felt quieter than it should have been. Not empty, but watchful. A car sat parked across the road, engine off. She walked past it without turning her head. But every instinct told her the same thing. Something had shifted. Back in the apartment, Bumpy was already there when she arrived. He didn't ask how her performance went. He didn't need to. "You felt it too," he said. Mame nodded. "They're watching," she replied. Bumpy walked a window, looked out at the street below, then pulled the curtains slightly closed. "This isn't about revenge anymore," he said quietly. "It's about control." Mame stepped closer. "And if they think they're losing it?" Bumpy looked at her, his expression calm but heavy. "Then they'll do something to take it back." The room fell silent, because both of them knew what that could mean. Not just for them, but for everyone around them. And somewhere out there, in a part of the city that didn't sleep either, decisions were already being made, moves being set into motion by people who believed they had just been challenged. The only problem was, they had no idea how far this was about to go. The next 2 days passed without anything happening. And that was the problem. No messages, no threats, no strange calls in the middle of the night. Even the feeling of being followed seemed to fade, like whatever had been watching Mame had suddenly stepped back. To anyone else, it might have felt like things were calming down, but not to Bumpy Johnson. He had seen this before, the quiet before something bigger, the kind of silence that wasn't empty, it was loaded. "You don't disappear unless you're setting something up," he said one evening, pacing slowly across the apartment. Mame sat at the table listening, her fingers lightly resting near her purse. She didn't interrupt. She had learned that much. Sometimes the most important things were said in between the words. "So what are they waiting for?" she asked. Bumpy stopped walking. The right moment. And that answer didn't make things easier. It made them heavier. Because the right moment could be anything, anywhere. It meant they weren't reacting anymore. They were choosing. That same night, one of Bumpy's people showed up at the door, out of breath, eyes alert. "There's talk," he said quickly. "Not loud, but it's spreading. People from outside Harlem. New faces. They've been asking questions." "What kind of questions?" Bumpy asked. "About her." The room went still. Mame didn't look away this time. "Then they're not just watching anymore." Bumpy shook his head slightly. "No, they're mapping things out. Where she goes, when she's alone, who's around. Patterns, not a random move. A planned one, the kind that doesn't leave room for mistakes." Later that night, Mame couldn't sleep. She stood by the window, looking out at the street below. Everything looked normal again. People passing by, distant voices, a car driving through. But she knew better now. Normal didn't mean safe. Behind her, Bumpy sat quietly, not saying much, but not relaxed either. His mind was working through possibilities, angles, risks. For the first time in a long time, this wasn't something he could control directly, because it wasn't just about strength anymore. It was about timing. And whoever was on the other side was being patient. The next morning, Mame left the apartment earlier than usual. Same routine, same steady walk, but there was a difference now. She wasn't just aware of her surroundings. She was expecting something. Every step felt like it mattered. Halfway down the block, she noticed it. A man standing near the corner, pretending to read a newspaper. He didn't look up when she passed, but the page never turned. She kept walking. Then another one, across the street this time, leaning against a car, watching reflections instead of looking directly. Her pace didn't change, but her grip tightened. By the time she reached the next intersection, she realized something else. This wasn't random. This was coordinated. They weren't hiding anymore. They were closing in. And for the first time since that day on the street, even with everything she had learned, everything she had become, the situation felt different, bigger, like whatever was coming next wouldn't be something she could simply walk away from. And somewhere behind her, just out of sight, someone made a move. Mame didn't turn around. Every instinct in her body told her to, but she didn't. She kept walking, steady, controlled, just like she had practiced. But now her senses were sharper than ever. The footsteps behind her weren't rushed. They weren't careless either. They were deliberate. She crossed the street, blending into a small group of people waiting at the corner. For a moment, it felt like she had space again, breathing room. But then she saw something that made her chest tighten. The man with the newspaper was gone. So was the one leaning against the car. They hadn't left. They had repositioned. This wasn't just watching anymore. This was movement, coordination, a plan unfolding in real time. Mame kept going, turning down a busier street, hoping the crowd would give her cover. But as she passed a storefront window, her eyes caught something in the reflection. A third man, closer than the others. Too close. Her hand slowly slipped into her purse, fingers brushing against the cold metal inside. Not out of panic, but preparation. She didn't stop walking, didn't break rhythm. Then suddenly, a voice came from behind her. Don't reach for it. Low, calm, right at her shoulder. Mame froze for half a second, then turned just enough to see him from the corner of her eye. He didn't look like the others. No tension in his face. No rush in his posture. If anything, he looked controlled, like he wasn't there to grab her. He was there to talk. You've got attention now, he continued quietly. More than you think. Mame didn't respond. Her grip didn't loosen either. What do you want? She asked, her voice steady. The man glanced ahead, scanning the street before answering. Not what they want. That one sentence changed everything, because now it wasn't just one threat. It was two. Mame slowly turned to face him fully. Then why are you here? Before he could answer, a car pulled up at the corner, too fast, too sudden. The same kind of car she had learned to notice. The kind that didn't belong in moments like this unless it was meant to. The man's expression shifted for the first time. They moved early, he muttered. From across the street, one of the watchers stepped forward. Another appeared from behind. The space around her tightened in an instant. Mame's heart started to race, but her face didn't show it. She had trained for this, prepared for this, but not like this. Not with unknown sides. Not with someone standing next to her, who clearly knew more than he was saying. Listen to me, the man said quickly, his voice lower now. If you stay here, you're playing their game. And yours? Mame asked. He met her eyes, serious, direct. Mine might be the only reason you walk away from this. Across the street, the men were getting closer. Too close. And somewhere, not far away, Bumpy Johnson was about to realize this wasn't just an attack. It was something far more complicated, and it had already begun. Mame didn't wait any longer. The moment the men stepped closer, she moved. Not fast, not wild, controlled. Her hand came out of her purse, steady, and she stepped back just enough to create space. The street around them slowed, people sensing something was wrong, but not fully understanding it. The man beside her didn't reach for anything. He just watched the others, like he already knew how this would play out. Don't, he said quietly, not to her, but to them. They didn't listen. One of the men took another step forward, trying to close the gap, trying to force the moment, and that was all it took. Mame raised her hand, just enough to make her point clear. Not reckless, not panicked, just certain. The hesitation hit instantly. It spread between them like a crack in glass. Because this wasn't the woman they expected anymore. And in that pause, everything shifted. The car that pulled up suddenly rolled forward again, slow this time, almost uncertain. The men looked at each other, something unspoken passing between them. This wasn't going according to plan. Not clean, not easy. And in their world, anything messy meant risk. Too much risk. One of them stepped back first. Then another. No words. No threats. Just a quiet decision to walk away. Within seconds, they were gone. The street returned to normal like nothing had happened. People kept moving. Cars passed. The tension faded from the air, but not from Mame. She stood there, still, her heart pounding, her mind catching up to what just happened. Then she turned to the man beside her. "They weren't afraid of me," she said. "Not at first." He shook his head slightly. "No, they were afraid of what happens after." And she understood. This wasn't about one moment. It was about everything connected to it. About who she was now. About who stood behind her. About Bumpy Johnson. But then she looked closer at him. "You knew they'd be here," she said. He didn't deny it. "I knew they were planning something," he replied. "I just didn't know how far they'd go." Mame narrowed her eyes. "You're not one of them." "No." "Then who are you?" For the first time, he hesitated. "Someone who's been watching both sides," he said, because this was never just about revenge. That answer didn't sit right. Before she could press further, a familiar car pulled up fast, stopping just short of them. Bumpy stepped out, his eyes immediately locking onto Mame, then shifting to the man beside her. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Bumpy's expression changed. Not anger, recognition. "You," he said quietly. Mame looked between them. "You know him?" Bumpy didn't take his eyes off the man. "Yeah," he said slowly. "I do." The man gave a small nod. "Didn't think we'd meet like this." Mame felt the ground shift under her again, because whatever she thought this was, it wasn't over. And as Bumpy stepped closer, his voice low and serious, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about protecting her anymore. It was about something much bigger that had been building long before today. And now, there was no walking away from it. Bumpy didn't say anything for a moment. He just looked at the man like he was replaying something old in his mind. Then he exhaled slowly. "I thought you were out of this life." The man gave a faint smile. "I tried to be." Mame stood between them, her eyes moving from one to the other. "Someone want to explain what's going on?" Bumpy finally turned to her. "He's not with them," he said. "Never really was. He used to move information between sides. Quietly, made sure things didn't turn into wars." The man nodded. "And right now, things are closer to a war than anyone wants to admit." That landed heavy, because everything that had happened, the stalking, the threats, the attempt on the street, it wasn't random anymore. It was pressure building from different directions, all at once. "Why step in now?" Mame asked. "Because this time," he said, looking directly at her, "you changed the pattern." She frowned slightly. "By defending myself?" "By doing it in the open," he replied. "In daylight, in front of witnesses. That doesn't just send a message, it forces people to respond. And not everyone wants the same response." Bumpy understood exactly what he meant. "Some want escalation," he said, "and some don't," the man finished. For the first time since it started, things made sense in a different way. This wasn't just about one crew trying to make a move. It was about a divide. People pushing for control and others trying to keep things from spiraling. "So what happens now?" Mame asked quietly. Bumpy looked at her, then at the street, then back again. "Now we make it clear." That same night, word started moving again, but this time, it came from Bumpy Johnson himself. Not loud, not reckless, just direct. No more games, no more indirect moves. Anyone coming near his home, his people, or his wife will be dealt with immediately. But more importantly, another message followed right behind it. "This ends here." It wasn't a threat. It was a line. And in that world, lines mattered. Over the next few days, the tension didn't disappear, but it shifted. The watchers faded. The strange car stopped appearing. The silence returned, but this time it felt different. Not loaded, settled. The man who had stepped in that day disappeared just as quietly as he had shown up. No goodbye, no explanation. Just gone. But his presence had done what it needed to do. Kept things from tipping too far. Back in the apartment, things were quieter too. Mame stood by the window again, like she had so many nights before. But she wasn't the same person anymore. Not the one who had once sat in fear, asking for protection. Bumpy walked up beside her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah." After a moment, she added, "You were right." He raised an eyebrow. "About what?" She looked at him. "You couldn't protect me." He didn't smile. "But she did. But you taught me how to protect myself." There was a quiet understanding in that moment. No need for anything more. Because what happened on that street didn't just change how others saw her. It changed how she saw herself. And that was something no one could take away. In the end, people didn't stay away because of fear alone. They stayed away because they understood something clearly now. She wasn't a weakness. She was a line you didn't cross. And sometimes, the strongest protection isn't someone standing in front of you. It's becoming someone no one wants to stand against.